Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Katrina Rausa-Chan, Cuba Director and your moderator for today. And I'm very honored to welcome all of you to Philippine Startup Week 2020 and today's press conference. We are back for a second run in a joint collaboration of the Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Science Technology, Department of Information Communications Technology, Cuba Innovation Hub, and various private organizations and community partners. This virtual conference would not be possible without our partner organizations and sponsors: Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, Youth Business International supported by Google.org, 917 Ventures, Investing in Women, PLDT Global, Prosperna, PayMongo, CIC, PhilExport, and our 61 community partners. Thank you also to our media partners: Ambidexter, Business World and SparkUp, CNN Philippines, Esquire Philippines, E27, Kumu, WhenInManila.com, Podcast Network Asia, and Rappler. The Philippine Startup Week aims to highlight the Filipino entrepreneurial spirit as we power up the new normal together. To start it off, I am pleased to call on Cuba Innovation Hub President Rene Butch-Maley to officially welcome everyone.
Each year, one of the things I look forward to in November is Philippine Startup Week. No matter how many typhoons hit the country, and despite the pandemic, it fills me with a sense of hope for the startup ecosystem here. Like everyone else in the world, startups have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Some have closed or had to lay off employees. Others have had to pivot to a new business model in order to survive. I even know a couple of startups that have turned to producing PPEs or inexpensive PCR testing machines. However, according to a PwC, Kubo, DTI, and Ideaspace survey, 21% said that the virus has resulted in increased demand for their products and services. Increased demand for the products and services. So that's quite a figure. So the tech-enabled and innovative nature of startups has helped them lead the shift toward a digital economy. Whether it's learning, buying, or consuming entertainment, all of us are discovering new ways of doing things. Investagrams is teaching Filipinos how to invest in the stock market digitally. Zagana is delivering vegetables directly from farmers to the doorsteps of consumers. Grocer Genie allows you to order guest packages for online parties. Kubo, together with Youth Business International and supported by Google, held a competition where the top startups that created COVID solutions received 100,000 pesos each. Kubo has also migrated from a purely physical space to one that hosts all of its programs online, including one for incubators around the country, supported by DOST, and another with the Australian government that supports women-led startups and is called Startup Pinay. The world is changing, and Philippine startups are showing us the way. That's really the rationale behind this year's theme: Filipino startups powering up to the new normal. Philippine Startup Week is a catalyst for the whole startup ecosystem. And we have a real treat for you this week. The next 5 days will feature a record 56 community events with 3 pitching competitions, 160 speakers, and over 5,000 participants. Silicon Valley, India, Indonesia, and even Hungary are all part of Philippine Startup Week. Let me thank the Department of Science and Technology, the Department of Trade and Industry, and the Department of Information and Communications Technology for their support. Several of the secretaries and undersecretaries will be speaking along with Vice President Lenny Robredo. Kubo itself has handpicked 100 startups that we will showcase throughout the week through online pitching and virtual booths. This is going to be quite an experience. Over the years, Kubo has deployed over 167 million pesos in assistance to startups, along with providing free office space and free internet. And our support of Philippine Startup Week is one of the ways that we are boosting the ecosystem. I'm really proud of what the Kubo team has accomplished. They worked many long nights in order for this event to take place. So I'm especially grateful to all of them and to Katrina Chan and Natasha Bautista in particular. And I want to thank all of you for making the time to be here today. And I look forward to answering any and all questions.
Thank you very much, Butch. You've heard the inspiration behind Philippine Startup Week 2020, and we in Kubo couldn't be more proud to be part of it. Now we invite you to watch this video from DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña as he shares his message of empowerment and hope, shining light on the possibilities and opportunities that await Filipino startups in the future.
To DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez and DICT Secretary Gringo Honasan. To the DOST Undersecretary Rowena Cristina Guevara, DTI Undersecretary Rafaelita Aldaba, DICT Assistant Secretary Emmanuel Rey Caintic, and other government officials and employees who are present here. To Mr. Rene Boots Mailey and our partners from Kubo Innovation Hub, friends from the media and other guests, a pleasant afternoon to all of you. On behalf of the Department of Science and Technology, let me first thank our partners from the DTI, DICT, and Kubo Innovation Hub for making this Philippine Startup Week 2020 happen. With all the things that had happened this year due to the pandemic and other disasters, organizing this huge event is a major feat, and we are happy that we are continuing this tradition which we started last year. Speaking of last year, after the signing of the implementing rules and regulations of the Innovative Startup Act during the Philippine Startup Week 2019, we immediately convened the heads of the agencies of the DOST sectoral councils, DOST Research and Development Institutes or RDIs, and the DOST regional offices for the harmonization of programs and projects supporting startups and startup enablers. We realized that our current programs can be modified to align to the provisions of the Innovative Startup Act and to cater to more startups. We also revised our DOST Grant in Aid Program guidelines to include provisions for startups, and we are now finalizing the specific guidelines for the provision of research and development grants for startups. Tomorrow, at the 4th Technology Business Summit, the Philippine Council for Industry, Energy, and Emerging Technologies, R&D, or PSERD, will be launching their Startup Research Grant Program. The DOST has also recently launched 3 new programs which can complement the existing startup programs of the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, or IPOPHIL, of the DTI. The IFWD PH, or iForward PH, which means Innovations for Filipinos Working Distantly from the Philippines. This is a program which aims to provide opportunities for returned overseas Filipino workers to establish technology-based microenterprises. The second program is the iStart program. iStart means innovation, science and technology for accelerating regional technology-based development. This aims to support balanced development geographically by accelerating regional growth through science, technology, and innovation. The most recent one, which was launched last Tuesday, is the Science and Technology Superhighway Program, which is a collaboration between the DOST and the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, or IPOPHIL of DTI. This aims to facilitate the filing of applications for the registration and grant of protection for intellectual property rights from DOST-supported research outputs and innovations, which includes startups. I believe that our partners and counterparts from the DTI and DICT are also doing their part in coming up with different programs and support infrastructures for startups as mandated in the Innovative Startup Act. And these are manifestations that we in government are doing our best to provide support even during this pandemic. We want to let you know that we have not forgotten what we have promised last year. There may be some delays, but we are not stopping. We at the DOST and the entire science and technology community also celebrate the National Science and Technology Week 2020 this week. We would also like to invite you to the different events that are simultaneously being conducted, along with the different startup-related events of the Startup Week. This year has been challenging, and yet we still managed to organize simultaneous big events. This shows our strong affirmation of our commitment to support startups and the startup community as a whole. However, we cannot do this alone, and we invite all our partners in the startup ecosystem to work harder together in order to achieve our goals. Maraming salamat at mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you, Secboy. Now let's hear from DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. With today's launch of the Philippine Startup Week 2020, the Department of Trade and Industry reaffirms its commitment to strengthen the local startup community and showcase the country's growing startup ecosystem. This large-scale initiative was organized in collaboration with the Departments of Science and Technology, DOST, and Information and Communications Technology, DICT, as well as the QBO Innovation Hub and private sector partners like the PLDT Group. Through this event, DTI hopes to inspire our people to come up with new, relevant, and disruptive innovations that would address the needs of our society, especially with our country burdened by the present COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, we had already seen the valued Filipino creativity and entrepreneurship in full force with the growing startup community offering valued innovative services. For example, Easy Fulfill, an enterprise solutions startup, partnered with DTI's Export Marketing Bureau to help our micro SMEs and exporters to sell on global platforms like Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. We are confident that with the Philippines Startup Week, our digital, tech-enabled startup enterprises will find ways to lead our country towards post-pandemic economic recovery and national competitiveness. DTI's Slingshot Conference this Wednesday, November 25, will focus on how we can capitalize on collaboration to promote the growth of our startups and foster the development of our startup ecosystem. It will also tackle how startup enablers can harness cross-border collaboration and cooperation to productively engage aspiring entrepreneurs and support other local initiatives for development. In addition, the conference will feature local startups whose international experience and connections can provide guidance and inspiration to other startups in their efforts to scale up and globalize. While most of our startups are still in the early stage of funding and startup development, providing adequate assistance will boost their potential and help them scale up. Hence, DTI will support startups in their growth, overseas exposure, and experience in the international market. This support would include the following: provision of funding and capital requirements, programs for market expansion and industry matching, ease of regulatory requirements and compliance, access to relevant local and international networks and mentors, and assistance for international market expansion. With the aid of the Filipino creative community of innovators, entrepreneurs, and enablers, we aim to create more entrepreneurial opportunities for doing business in our country, which would generate more jobs and employment for our people. In doing so, we will move past the new normal and shift towards a better normal, wherein our people can enjoy a better and more comfortable quality of life as promised by our President, Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Let us dream bigger and brighter so that we can build a modern, dynamic, and responsive technology entrepreneurs in a post-COVID Philippines. We hope that everyone here will help to realize that dream with us. Salamat po.
Thank you, Setmon, for that very inspiring message. The pandemic has not stopped us from championing Filipino startups, and this year we've gone fully virtual. So we thank you all for being with us here today. We invite you to please stay tuned and join us for the next part, where I'll be back to discuss and share more about this year's Philippine Startup Week and for a live panel discussion and media Q&A with DOST Undersecretary Rowena Cristina L. Guevara, DTI Undersecretary Rafaelita Fita M. Aldaba, and DICT Assistant Secretary Emmanuel Rey Caintig. I invite you all to please proceed and enter the next session, Press Conference Part 2, which you can find at the schedule panel, whether you're on mobile or desktop. See you there.